If God had an important message for us, why would he make it so mysterious and confusing?
Why not just be clear, O Lord, and tell us what to do? If you're going to give us a Bible, how about just making it really clear? But we don't get that. We don't get that. Yeah, I mean...
Or at least what do you call those, Spark Notes or something?
Something. That would be nice, but instead what we have is we have actually debate and disagreement within the Bible, which again for me is a comfort, because that's sort of what we do too. We disagree about what God is up to and what God should be doing and what we think God needs to do. And let's turn to the Bible. That'll answer the question. Actually, in a way, what the Bible does, it actually models that process. And again, that's sort of unsettling in a way, because I need this Bible to be my anchor, and I get it. The Bible is very important, but maybe God is the anchor, maybe the Spirit of God, maybe that's the anchor. Maybe anchor is not even the right way to think about any of this. Right? But all I know is that the Bible puts this diversity in your face, so to speak, and you just can't avoid it. And trying to avoid it, you'll actually miss what's happening. For me, one of the greatest examples of this is the book of Job. The book of Job is fueled by this idea that on the one hand, we know that Job's suffering is nothing that he did. He didn't do anything to, quote, deserve it. But Job's friends, their whole speeches to Job, which take up like 30-something chapters in the book, they're all fueled by this notion that you must have done something to deserve it. And they're not bad friends. They're actually very good friends, but they're also very, I guess you could say, biblical. They are taking as their cue this idea of the Bible that's called retributional theology. It's if you do this, God will do that. And where do they get that from? Well, that's you see that sort of in Proverbs. You see it in Deuteronomy. You see it in a lot of the legal sections of the Old Testament, that actions have consequences, right? If you do something, an act will have sooner or later, there'll be a consequence for that, either a good consequence for a good act or a bad consequence for a bad act. And with Job, what we see is somebody having bad consequences. Well, you must have done something to deserve that. Surely, Job, you were doing so well to the naked eye, but really what's going on? Well, your actions have found you out and these negative consequences. And I think that's an interesting exchange between the two friends, because we know he hasn't done anything to deserve it. So who's right? Are his friends right, who are being very, let's say, biblical about their approach to Job? Or are we going to listen to Job, who is just talking out of the agony of his experience, struggling with God, and saying, I didn't do anything to deserve this. I did nothing. I have no idea what's going on. At the end of the book, the very last chapter, starting like around verse 7, God speaks, and he turns to one of Job's friends and he says, you have not spoken of me rightly as my servant Job has. In other words, Job is vindicated, Job is right, and the friends are not. So what we see in Job, it's not just a nice story of a suffering guy and he makes that okay at the end because God takes care of him. You see, this is a theological debate between, okay, what is God like? Do actions have consequences? Or does sometimes suffering just happen where it's not because of something we did? There's disagreement in the Bible on that issue. And this is not the only place, right? Like, why do people suffer? That's an old question. That's a biblical question that you have various answers to, because it's complicated. And maybe the point of watching these things next to each other, like Job next to, say, Deuteronomy, which is very over-the-top retributional theology. It's like there's a list of curses in like chapter 28 that are like so over-the-top, like God will kill you and everybody you know and give you diseases and, sell your wife and children off to slaves and you're going to eat your own babies and all kind of, it's like, come on here. But you see, that's the theology of a retributional God, which many Christians carry around with them, right? But that dialogue still continues because other people say, I don't think God's like this, here's why, right? And throwing proof texts at them doesn't help because their experience is very, very different. And the Bible itself gives us this dialogical model of working through what God is like. It's not a matter of some verses. It's a matter of this dialogue and debate that we see in the pages of the Bible that connect with us because we do the same thing too. The Bible is not that foreign of a book. It actually struggles with things. Another great example of this, one of my favorites in the whole Bible is Psalm 89, which basically goes like this: "Oh Lord, you're just the best. Here's why you're the best. You are steadfast. You're faithful to your people, and we know that. And also, by the way, you're the creator, which means you're mighty. So you're the mighty creator, and you're steadfast, you're faithful, you never lie. When you say something, oh Lord, boy, oh boy, can we count on it. You're fantastic. Hey, let's give an example. Hey, Lord, putting David on the throne was just great because you promised that there would never cease being a king from the line of David sitting on the throne, and the establishment of the monarchy is a sign of your might and your power and your faithfulness to your people. Thank you so much. It's fantastic." But we'd like to talk about the exile now too, because here's what happened at the exile. The Davidic line ceased. That thing that you promised in 2 Samuel chapter 7, for example, you have the monarchic line of David established by God, saying you'll never cease having one of your descendants sitting on the throne. It'll go on, quote, forever.
So God broke his promise?
Well, that's exactly what Psalm 89 seems to say. It says, you said this. And it says, "Oh Lord, will you forget us forever?" And that word forever is interesting because he's been using that throughout the whole psalm, saying your steadfast love lasts forever. We can always count on you. And now he says towards the end of the psalm, maybe it's not your steadfast love that lasts forever, maybe it's your absence and your forgetfulness that lasts forever. It's one of my favorite portions because it's sort of sarcastic like I am. There's a little bit of sarcasm there, even saying, basically, you lied to us, and you have to find a way to make this right. And, you can't just go to 2 Samuel 7. You have to go to Psalm 89 to see somebody struggling with something that's not happening the way you think it's supposed to happen. And, one way of looking at this, which I think is helpful, is, well, the Bible can't quite contain God. God is never bound to texts. God is not bound to anything. God is free, and God acts, and God is mysterious, and that's just the way it is with God. I think it has to be. Almost by definition, God is beyond our grasp, even beyond fully of the grasp of the biblical writers. Even though it's the Bible, it's not C.S. Lewis, it's not me writing. It is the Bible. It has the antiquity of tradition and the connection with God and how the people of God have been using this book. We take it seriously. But the Bible itself shows this diversity of thinking about a fundamental thing like, what is God like? Can we count on God or not? And to see that there, Psalm 44 accuses God of not showing up when they actually need him. And at one point, the psalmist basically says, wake up. Get up from your nap, oh Lord, because we need your help desperately down here. You used to help everybody else in the past. What about us? Right? Who here has not struggled with the absence of God when you've been taught your whole life God is present with you no matter what? Well, when you're in that tense moment, you're participating in the biblical narrative. You're actually a part of what the biblical writers themselves were engaging and talking about, right? So the Bible itself models for us, it reflects back to us, I'm going to even say the normalcy of some of these struggles, because the Bible doesn't always say the same thing. In the Bible, you have dialogue and you even have debate, you have disagreement, right? When you have the book of Ecclesiastes saying everything is futile and nothing makes sense and we're just going to die. Pretty much, that's the outlook of the book. Well, it's hard to sort of put that next to other like Psalms or other like parts of the Pentateuch where the law is life and God is beautiful and God's with you. This author experienced life differently. And I love the fact that when the Bible was like brought together in the groupings of books that we have and even in the order in which we see them, when that happened, those people who did that, they didn't keep any of these parts out. I guess they could have. They're editing. They could have done what they wanted to, but they embraced this tension and this dialogue and this debate because that's a part of the religious experience. That's a part of the experience of God. It's not always clear. The Bible demonstrates that fact that it's not an easy matter of just reading the book, right? And that's why, why isn't God consistent in what God says? Well, good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. Why doesn't God just do it another way? All I know is that in the Bible, here's what we have. And I choose to believe that there's something in this that is good and right for us to know, that in a healthy way reflects our own struggles and our own journey with God, where when we encounter the difficulties of life and hope seems lost, we're actually not alone when we're thinking that. There is a long history of God's people grappling with the very same thing. And so maybe the key to faith is not having those things ironed out for us, but it's what we do when they're not ironed out for us. And I'm glad the Bible looks the way that it does, that it actually models that for us. And I couldn't have written it better myself. What a great book. I would have made it shorter and have the answers clearer. But that's just me.
But still, if you have this God who breaks promises, is sleeping on the job, and wrote a book that's contradictory and confusing. Okay, great. Like, they struggle like me, but how do you find out what God wants us to do in that struggle?
Well, I think finding out what to do it's more than a matter of like going to the Bible to find the answer. But I think a big concept, and this sounds sort of ethereal and abstract, and it might be, but again, we're dealing with God in the Bible, and abstract is okay. But I think there's a concept in the Bible that is deeply undervalued in the Christian communities that I've been a part of, and that is the notion of biblical wisdom. Wisdom is not answers, it's being equipped to navigate life and to navigate it well while you make mistakes, while you have stops and starts, but you're gaining something that helps you answer questions like, okay, what do I do here, right? I've got all sorts of examples. One of my favorite ones is Proverbs 26, 4 and 5. Answer a fool, well, don't answer a fool, because then you're sort of like justifying him and giving him some credence. Or answer a fool, because if you don't, he's just going to think he's full of himself and you're going to let him get away with dumb stuff. And being a fool in the Bible is not a small thing. Fools lead you astray. They take you down the wrong paths. They're somewhat similar to the concept of like ungodless, or godless, ungodly, and maybe unrighteous. That's sort of what a fool is. A fool is like the opposite of what someone who follows God looks like, right? So do you answer a fool or not answer a fool? Give me a straight answer. Well, right there next to each other in two verses, you've got two contradictory pieces of advice, which is exactly the point of wisdom. The point of wisdom is to know, how do I know when to answer a fool or not answer a fool? Well, the answer is don't look at the Bible. The Bible tells you have to gain the wisdom to know when you're supposed to do these things. Well, that's rather abstract. It is, in a sense, but that's why one of the favorite metaphors in the book of Proverbs for wisdom is a path. It's a journey. It's a way. It's something you walk and learn. Along the way, you have life experiences, and along the way, you're actually being mentored by people who have had life experiences themselves and who've gained wisdom from them, and that's how you learn to navigate life. Wisdom, this is going to sound Star Wars-y, but wisdom is the force by which God ordered the universe. That's how Proverbs chapter 3 talks about wisdom. Wisdom was with God when he created. Proverbs chapter 8 has this wonderful metaphor where wisdom is like a child. When God is creating, it's sort of dancing and romping around God's feet. Wisdom is present when God establishes the created order itself. And you too can have access to wisdom when you're deciding, what's the best college for my kid to go to, right? Well, where's the Bible verse? No. You won't find it. It's not there, obviously. Somewhat, comically, years ago I read something by a Christian leader who was offering Bible verses for why Christians shouldn't go to the circus. Well, whether or not to go to a circus, that's maybe something worth talking about, but you won't find a Bible verse for it. You have to employ wisdom to know what's right in a certain situation. You know, when your kids are young, what movies should they watch, what movies should they not watch? Well, it depends on the kid, depends on the situation. And so you have to sort of make decisions that are geared towards that moment, almost sort of like winging it. That's sort of what this life is like, and we're trying to gain wisdom as a result. And when we do, we're tapping into God as creator and into the creation as a whole, right? So, I mean, that's how you can sort of know. It's not going to the Bible as a rule book, but it's letting the Bible open this window to you where you have the opportunity and the responsibility, well, to do what Proverbs says, which is, though it costs you all you have, seek wisdom. Wisdom is more valuable than gold and jewels or precious whatever. It's the thing that connects you to the very fabric of existence, right? Like I said, this gets a little bit abstract, but I think, see, that's this adult vision the Bible sort of puts out there for you. Not Bible verses that tell you what to do, but Bible verses that point you to something much bigger, where as creatures of God, we get to try to figure things out. Are you always going to be right? Of course not. You're going to make mistakes. What if that's all good? What if it's not like, hey, you missed that verse in Nehemiah or something? You should have known that was there. What's wrong with you? Life doesn't work that way. And I think the fact that the Bible has this internal debate and dialogue actually is one big example of the fact that you see in the Bible biblical writers inspired by God working things out as best they can in their moment. I think that I really think that's a beautiful, that's freeing. So you don't think of the Christian life as sort of hand-wringing, what do I do? What's God's perfect will for my life? Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You have to work things out. You're on a journey. And that's why to do that alone is very difficult. You need other people around you who work with you and mentor you and all that kind of stuff.